Over 200 years ago, a German explorer named Alexander von Humboldt stood at the edge of a muddy pool in South America. At his command, a herd of horses was driven straight into the still water. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the mud erupted. Long, dark shapes rose against the horses' legs, and the animals staggered, screamed, and some went under and did not come back up. For 2 centuries, people insisted Humboldt made it up. The consensus was that a soft, slippery fish with no wires or metal could not possibly knock down a 1,000-pound horse. A standard U.S. wall outlet carries about 120 volts. When an electric eel leaps from the water and presses its chin against a threat, it can discharge a spike of 860 volts. That is 5 to 7 times the power coming out of your wall, generated by a living body with no plug to draw from. How does a creature turn salt and water into a high-voltage weapon without melting itself? The answer hides inside special cells called electrocytes. Over millions of years, the eel repurposed ordinary muscle cells into units that no longer move the body at all. Instead, they store and release electricity. Even at rest, molecular pumps in the membrane shove 3 sodium ions out for every 2 potassium ions dragged in. This builds a charge difference called the resting potential, sitting at minus 85 thousandths of a volt. Alone, one cell barely twitches a compass needle. To reach high voltage, you stack. Like batteries in a flashlight, their voltages add up. The eel stacks 6,000 electrocytes in a single series-wired row. Then it runs many rows side by side in parallel. Series sums the voltage, parallel boosts the current. Add it all together, and a fraction of a volt becomes hundreds across the whole fish. It is a tiny, microscopic biological action that is multiplied millions of times over to become a massive high-voltage weapon. But a stack of batteries does nothing until a circuit closes. When the eel finally strikes, a command from its brain releases acetylcholine. The instant that chemical lands, every single cell flips its charge at the exact same moment. The entire cascade happens in about 2/1000ths of a second. A jolt that big does not actually burn the flesh of its prey. It attacks nerves. The eel's discharge floods the victim's motor nerves with a fake command, causing a violent, involuntary, full-body cramp the prey cannot stop. To execute this, the eel runs a precise electrical program. It starts by gliding through muddy, pitch-black water, emitting low-voltage radar pulses to map out surroundings where eyes are useless. When it senses something hiding, it fires a quick pair of high-voltage pulses, a doublet. This forces the hidden fish's muscles to twitch, giving away its exact location. Instantly, the eel unleashes a massive, rapid volley that locks the prey down completely so it cannot flee. Which brings us to the obvious question. If it fires hundreds of volts through highly conductive water, why does the eel not electrocute itself? The eel relies on stacked physical protections. First, the pulse lasts 2 milliseconds, which is brief to seize the eel's large muscles. Second, the eel is huge compared to the fish. A tiny prey takes the full force, while the eel absorbs a fraction. Combine that mass with thick layers of insulating fat wrapped around its brain, and the shooter stays perfectly safe. From sensing the environment, to remote controlling the prey, to swallowing it whole, the entire hunt is over in a fraction of a second. This animal is a precision hunter, executing a highly sophisticated sequence of events. The electric eel is not an isolated exception to how life works. Evolution arrived at the same basic trick multiple times. Torpedo rays generate shocks completely independently. Certain catfish and marine fish pump ions in stacked cells too. They each engineered the exact same biological battery without copying one another, because the raw ingredients were sitting inside every animal the whole time. Those ingredients, ions, membranes, and cells, are the ones building your body right now. Every thought in your head, every heartbeat, every flicker of a muscle is a tiny electrical event driven by the very same ions sliding across the very same kinds of membranes. Electricity is what life already runs on. The eel did not invent a new magical force. It simply took the spark that hums quietly inside every living thing and turned the volume all the way up.